Carrying on with our state theme, I'm really excited for our next panel, which is state organizing on climate smart healthcare. So as our network grew, when we were just a handful of states in the clinician network, we did a lot of the one-on-one mentoring with several of the state groups. But when we grew to 25, that became somewhat unsustainable. So last year, we asked our state network, could y'all choose a couple of issues that you're interested in to create more peer-to-peer learning? And one of the issues that bubbled up that many of our state clinician groups are working on is climate smart healthcare. So we're really grateful for a collaboration with Healthcare Without Harm, where we're working together on climate smart healthcare. And so we've co-planned this session highlighting several leaders in the space as we're thinking about opportunities to build resilience. How do we take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act dollars? And so I'm going to now hand it over to Dr. Lisa Del Buono. She's another one of our stars on the state level. She's the executive director for Michigan Clinicians for Climate Action. And so I'll bring her up to the stage, or all of our speakers might. Why don't you all head up? Do you want to introduce the rest of the speakers?
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
So once again, their full bios, they're all incredible, are in the program guide. So I'll just quickly introduce, we have Ina Goldman, who's the co-founder of Clean Power Prescription at Boston Medical Center. Lauren Koch, who's the Sustainability Program Manager at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center. And Noe Copley-Woods, who's the Assistant Dean for Sustainability at University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. And, oh, sorry, I should say, carrying on with our hybrid model, two of our speakers are going to be virtual. So, yeah.
Thanks very much, Lisa. And good morning, everybody. I don't know about you guys, but this has just been an incredible, incredible meeting. Don't you guys think? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you guys are going to be really inspired by the upcoming presentation. We have the good fortune to hear from 3 individuals from several different states who have done really amazing work and have great success stories to discuss regarding moving their institution along a path towards climate smart healthcare. So after this session, I just want to highlight the fact, and I think Lisa's already mentioned it, that there will be a workshop between 11 and noon talking about climate resilient clinics and hospitals. And then from 1 to 2, there'll be another workshop that's really focused on the organizing aspect of things using the Marshall-Ganz framework for organizing. And I don't think you want to miss that. So the 3 of these kind of fit together if the area you're interested in is climate smart healthcare. So before we begin, I just want to kind of set the intention for this session. And I want to take just a very short pause and I want each of you guys to think about, why was it that I first wanted to be a healthcare professional? Regardless of what type you are, just take a second and think about that. Don't say anything to anybody, but just do it for yourself. And then think about, well, why the heck am I here today? And why am I deciding that I need to act on climate? And think about the intersection between those 2 things. And I'm sure the answer is a little bit different for each one of us, but at its core, it's about taking care of our patients, taking care of our community, taking care of our loved ones. And the 2 are essential. We can't do that without also acting on climate change. And I think Healthcare Without Harm put together some great talking points that we as clinician leaders can use if we want to move our institutions towards climate smart healthcare. And they framed it this way. The healthcare sector has as its core mission healing, right? And yet we are responsible, as I'm sure all of you know, for 8.5% of the US greenhouse gas emissions and public health harms in the form of air pollution on the same order of magnitude as medical error. So that is a real disconnect. And it's one that many of our volunteers at MICA feel motivated to act on. And that's the reason why we have, as one of our campaigns, Climate Smart Healthcare. Fortunately, in 2021, and this may be history that you guys all know, so if it is, I apologize, but I'll go very quickly through this. The U.S. during the COP in Glasgow was one of 50 countries to commit to decarbonizing healthcare, and the Biden administration then introduced a health sector climate pledge, which we fondly call the HHS climate pledge. And with this growing momentum and under the guidance of groups like Healthcare Without Harm, but also the National Academy of Medicine and the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity, and of course, the consortium, many of our state affiliates are working on this issue. And as was mentioned, we have been meeting regularly under the guidance of Bev every single month to kind of share best practices and strategies. That work will continue, and we are developing a working group now, which I'm going to lead along with Kathleen Shapley-Quinn right over there. And if you guys are interested in this area and want to participate, reach out to us. I just wanted to highlight that. So enough about me and us and what we're working on. I just want to get right to the people that are going to tell us their stories. And Anna Goldman is going to tell us about a really cool program called the Clean Power Prescription Plan that she started at Boston Medical Center. And I think she's in our virtual world somewhere. So I give it to the people who know how to do that.
Hi, this is Anna. I don't know if you can see me. Okay, can everyone see me? Yes. Okay. Well, I'm really excited to be here. To the audiovisual people, I cannot see my slides, so I'm not sure if that's possible, so I can just see where I am in the talk. Let's see. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here today with this incredible group of fellow advocates for climate and health, and I've been really inspired by the talks I've seen so far. Thank you so much to Lisa and the whole team for putting this together. So I'm a primary care physician at Boston Medical Center. I'm also a health services researcher, and more recently have been engaged in sustainability work at BMC, which has been a really exciting change for me. And I'm here to tell you today about a program that I created and co-founded with our Chief of Sustainability and Real Estate, Bob Biggio, who's one of our executive leadership team at BMC. If you could advance to the next slide. So a little about BMC. We're the largest safety net hospital in New England, and we have always been kind of at the forefront of screening for social determinants of health, as I'm sure many others in this room have health systems that are also engaged in that work. So for us, we call it our Thrive screening. We ask about a bunch of different social determinants of all of our patients that come into primary care, into the emergency room, and some of our other clinics we're rolling it out to now. We ask about housing insecurity, food insecurity, and also whether they have difficulty paying their energy bills. In 2022, we screened about 75,000 patients. It's actually less than half of the patients that we saw throughout BMC, but it's not in every clinical area. And 6,500 screened positive in 2022. And then last year in 2023, we wrote more than 1,300 letters that providers like myself can write in Massachusetts. There is a rule that if you have a chronic condition, a provider can write a letter preventing disconnection of utilities if you've fallen behind on your payments. But that's pretty much all we've been doing to address utility insecurity. And energy costs are particularly high in Massachusetts. It's one of the most expensive energy markets in the country. The average low-income household in Massachusetts spends 10% or more of their income on energy costs, whereas for non-low-income households, it's more like 3%. So high levels of high energy burden in our state. If you could advance to the next slide. Thank you. So knowing this and having written many utility disconnection letters myself for my patients, I approached our Bob Biggio, who I mentioned, who's our Chief of Sustainability, and actually pitched a different idea to him. I had met with an organization through advocacy work that I had been doing. I should mention that I am a member of the group Climate Code Blue, which is a group of doctors in the Boston area that do climate advocacy and work. We are an affiliate of the Medical Consortium on climate and health. And through that work, I had connected with a group of individuals called Energy Allies, and they put solar installations on community buildings that then are gifted to low-income communities to own and operate. So it's basically a source of passive income generation for communities that have had low levels of investment in the community. So it builds wealth. I loved that idea. I wanted to try to bring that to BMC, as the idea would be that we would have been a site to put solar on our roof for this group. So I pitched that idea to Bob. He wasn't ready to do a 20-year lease on one of our roof spaces, because it turns out that the roof space on healthcare institutions, at least at ours, is a very active space for new equipment and new technology that needs to be up there. But what he did say is that he had just finished building the second solar array on our campus, which is on an administrative building that we had been recently renovated. And he said, this is a good time to consider community solar at our hospital because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And if you want to build it, you can build a program that does community solar where we would own the solar and give out shares to our patients. So that's where the idea of giving solar energy credits to patients, which is what Clean Power Prescription is. That's where it came from. And this is a picture of the actual solar array on our administrative building. You can see the city of Boston in the background. If you could advance, please. Thank you. So what is Clean Power Prescription? We have this, it's a 357 kilowatt array on the roof of our building. It produces energy. We call it virtual net metering is the process by which we transfer the credit. So basically the energy is produced by the solar array. It flows through a meter into the electric grid, and the meter counts the value of that, how many kilowatt hours we are producing. The utility company, which is Eversource in this case, assigns a monetary value to those credits, and then we could have chosen to just keep them on our BMC electric account. Instead, we are transferring them to patients. And so we are transferring the plan is approximately $50 per month for a period of 12 months. And this is a pilot program, so we're going to evaluate that. It's not a very long-term thing, because we wanted to spread the benefit to more than just a few families. Because of the size of the array, we're limited in how many households we can help in this pilot phase. We're aiming to help between 80 to 100 households in this, which is the amount of credits that we can produce at that level of a $50 a month level. Okay, next slide, please. So I mentioned that Bob was more open to this idea because of the IRA. The IRA, sorry, the formatting on these slides somehow got a little messed up in the transfer, but I can just walk through it. So the IRA can cover up to 70% of a community solar project or any renewable energy infrastructure project through a few different mechanisms. And the all the way to the right of your screen, the last two, the 50 and 60 to 70%, those are environmental justice adders on the subsidies. So yeah, you can't, the text at the bottom is a little hard to see in this due to the formatting problems, but all the way to the right, you see the energy community bonus and the EJ community bonus. So, and that's what is really benefiting us. So you get 40% of the cost of installation covered just through it being a renewable energy installation and through using domestically produced parts, and then paying a living wage to the people who are doing the installation. But then you get additional adders if you are, for the energy community bonus, that's if you're building in an area that was historically had an economy based on fossil fuels or is on a brownfield. And then the EJ community bonus, that's if you are building in a low income neighborhood, or even you get, so that's 10%, but if you're building an array that is going to serve a low-income community, at least 50% of the power going to that low-income community, you can get 20%, which is what we have applied for and actually just recently been approved to get. And another excellent thing about the IRA subsidies, these investment tax credits, is that they can be taken advantage of by nonprofits. So historically, if you had a tax credit mechanism that was funding that was giving you a subsidy, if you were a nonprofit or also a state or local government, you couldn't, it was hard to get that, right? Because you don't have tax liability in the same way that a private company does. The IRA introduced the elective pay mechanism that allows nonprofits and local governments to just basically get paid as opposed to having it go through a tax mechanism. If you can advance, please. Because we are a 12-month program and we can't keep people indefinitely, we wanted to leave people better than we found them and hopefully improve their situation, their energy insecurity while we have them in the program. So we're partnering with community organizations to improve the affordability of their energy and the efficiency of their home energy usage. So we are partnering with a group called ABCD. It's Action for Boston Community Development. They have an energy division. They're our local Mass Save, which is a government program. They give Mass Save services to low-income households. So they offer help getting on to some of the subsidized energy programs, LIHEAP, the discounted electric rate, and then helping with utility debt, the arrearage management program. But they also have a suite of home energy efficiency services, which includes going into people's homes and replacing low efficiency appliances, also weatherization, so improving insulation so the house doesn't lose cooling or heating in extreme temperatures. And then actually they will put in an air source heat pump for free in certain households. It tends to be the households that have oil or propane heat to begin with. If they have gas, it tends to increase the energy costs more than so much that they don't tend to actually put the air source heat pumps in, but it's an electrification service that they offer. And then we are also doing we're partnering with Energy Allies, which is a group that helps patients get out of third-party energy supplier contracts, which is a kind of a scam that we have going in Massachusetts, where people are getting third-party energy suppliers that don't actually add any value to their energy experience and just overcharge people. And our low-income residents have fallen victim to these scams much more than higher income households. So we're helping people get out of those contracts. Next slide, please. So looking forward, one note about this program, we launched in October and then learned shortly after the launch, when we submitted our IRA subsidies application, that we could not turn the equipment on until we received an approval of our IRA subsidy application. And that was kind of in the fine print somewhere, but we had not been aware of it. And so we had to delay placing our solar array into service in order to not forfeit those substantial subsidies. I'm happy to report that in the time between when I submitted these slides and now, we have been approved, as I mentioned, for the IRA subsidy. So we expect to get 60% of our costs covered, and now we are in the process of installing the meter and turning the array on. And actually, this week we will enroll our first patients. And then we also have a goal to increase our capacity by partnering with external organizations that can host their own solar arrays and donate to our patients through the same virtual net metering process that we're doing by partnering with the utility. We can transfer credits from any solar array in Massachusetts to patients at BMC, and it's a community benefit that any organization can choose to participate in. If they install their own solar, they can donate to our patients, and then if they donate at least 50% of their power, they can also become eligible for those IRA subsidies. Next slide, please. So I I have some slides on different challenges that we've had. I think I'm at 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop here and maybe we can go through some of these. These were things that I included if we had time for people who may be thinking of doing similar programs at their own institutions. But we can do that during the Q&A if people are interested in basically roadblocks that we encountered and then how we dealt with them. So I will stop there.
That is just one of the most inspiring programs, and I know Laura Church, who's here with us from Micah, and I have been trying to figure out how we can reproduce some of the work that you're doing potentially in Michigan, but I can't wait to hear about what you see as challenges, and I hope we have time to go into that as well. Now I'm going to pass it over to Noe Woods to tell her success story.
Okay, success. Well, we'll see. Shout out to the AV team. You guys are doing a great job. I got to see mission control back there. It's really sophisticated. Looks like they're pulling it up. Great. Hello, fellow Homo sapiens. We started out as hungry, heavily predated cave dwellers, and 250,000 years later, if you take our biomass and all of our livestock, we are 96% of the biomass of planet Earth, which leaves 4% for wild animals. We are the easiest species to dislike. But ironically, what I would say I've taken so far from this conference is really a feeling of love for Homo sapiens. Thank you all for giving me that. So despite being objectively the least organized person in this entire conference, Lisa has decided to ask me to talk to you about organizing. For my background, just for situational awareness, I grew up in the forests of Illinois in an unincorporated area. We had captive wild wolves, and I spent my childhood butchering rabbits and lopping their heads over the fence to these wolves. And when it would rain, we had a lot of buckets that we'd put out in the living room to catch the rainwater that came through our roof. And my father's proudest legacy to his children was this quote, which is that question authority, not because it is wrong, but because it is there. So you can imagine for me the growth curve that I have gone through to the maybe a tiny bit of a pyramid scheme of academia and medicine, and adjusting myself from this obtuse angle of this kind of unconventional background. And so although so many of the groups we've seen are way ahead of what we've done in Pittsburgh, we're a baby group. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit about starting. Many of you are past this phase, but I hope that my unique perspective might offer a few interesting insights. We'll see. You could tell me. So next slide. Here's where the AV guys are going to get challenged. Okay, I'm going to squander 2 minutes and 15 seconds of my 15 minutes showing you a video. And during this video, I want you to think about a couple of things. So the first thing I want you to think about is, how was the plan you're about to see communicated? Verbally, written? How did they orchestrate this? What are the roles of the people that you're going to see doing this? And how is the whole so much more than the different parts you're going to see in this? And then how do they manage to build momentum? So they're organizing. How do they manage to build momentum and then bring people in? I probably have to press play on this. Okay. Does that mean I open this little laptop and hit some buttons? Ooh, do I just touch the screen?
There's a keyboard, I think I can.
There we go. Okay, good. It's hard to stop that, but it does go on for 6 minutes, so we will stop there. You're welcome. I hope that sticks with you for the rest of the day. It always makes me cry. Hearing Beethoven. Okay. So this is my first job after OBGYN residency. I got to work on Navajo Nation, Diné, as they call themselves. This rock is Spider Rock, and on top of Spider Rock is Spider Woman, and she weaves the universe. She weaves humanity and the world. In that clip of Beethoven, there are 3 things I think that make that organizing so powerful. The first is that it's very well made, very strong. So all of those musicians are using a piece of music written by an amazing composer, right? They're following a very specific mission statement. They're all very organized together. And although you don't see their music in their heads, right, they're following the mission so exactly, they've actually committed it to memory. And the second thing is that each of the roles of the people is completely unique. There is a percussionist, there is a violinist, there's a bass player, there is a conductor, there's a choir. And then there's the German, presumably they're Germans and they're singing along with the Ode to Joy, the right words. Then there's all those people who are also joining in, and they each have a different role. And that's what makes it so interesting. If you just played each of those individually, or if they were all violins, it wouldn't be interesting at all, except for to me as a violin player. Then the third thing that's so powerful about it is that it's tapping into what we need as humans, which is human connection. And any organization, and all of yours, and you've mentioned this many times, you are feeding our need for human connection and also for joy. In Navajo Nation, there's a very strong a culture of weaving. So you take sheep's wool and you make it into these beautiful rugs that are not appropriate for the floor. They are hung on the wall, and they are beautiful scenes of Navajo life. And the women who weave them have those 3 same things in common, which is that they're making them very strong. So each Navajo rug, each symphony, each of our organizations might look completely differently, but it's some group have really thought about what the structure of this is going to be ahead of time. When a Navajo woman weaves her rug, she's going to think about what characters, how they're going to interact. Then secondly, she's going to use many different strands, different colors, different thicknesses to give it texture, to give it interest. And then the third thing is it has to be beautiful, it has to be joyful. Next slide. So the strand that I have brought to the organization that I have, our baby organization, so it's 2 years old. The strand that I have brought is a background. So when you asked about what got you interested in being in this, I love dissecting things. So I'm not sure. Yeah, oh, really? Yeah, that's right. You're a pathologist. So the strand that I brought to my organization is I got really interested in, after throwing out trash for so many years and feeling conflicted about it, I hooked up with some life cycle analysis engineers and looked at the environmental footprint of surgery. That's sort of how I got my start in all of this. This is a picture of engineers frying chicken in the operating room. So we're using the ligature device to look at the electrical output of when you fry chicken, when your foot's on the pedal, when your foot's off the pedal. The next picture is an engineering PhD student with the stylets from endotracheal tubes, which he's made into a heart. We had a lot of fun going through this trash with the engineers. Next slide. And in fact, brought a whole group of engineers into the operating room. And for those of you who follow life cycle analysis, this is the first time Dr. Cassie Thiel ever entered an operating room. She's a giant now in the life cycle analysis world. She's in the back corner there. And when these engineers went into the operating room, they came out and one of them said to me, "That is the coolest thing I've ever seen." And these students all went on to get their PhDs and now are faculty studying the impact of healthcare. Super, super, it was just so that's the strand, the piece that I brought to my organization. Next slide. So like some of you in this audience, we had different folks floating around in the ether. We had a chef who really was interested in sustainable food there, you can see, and also Star Wars. We had a pediatrician who loves planting trees. She's kind of in the background. We had another pediatrician, Gabe Cicernos, who's here with us today, very interested in policy, looking with his daughter, admiringly looking at her father, who's talking to a group there. We had Dr. Maya Raghavan, who was here yesterday, a pediatrician really interested in community organizing. And so we had, and many others, next slide, many different strands coming together to form this organization. A few of us took the time to do the climate fellowship, the organizing climate fellowship through Harvard. And this gave us a couple of things. It gave us the time to talk to each other, which was profound. And they also made us make a mission statement and a logo. And if you refer back to the beginning of my talk where I talked about my upbringing, you can imagine how hokey this felt to me and to authority. I don't, just from my background, but boy, was that powerful. So it's really served us well. It really taught me a lot to have a really focused mission statement. And they made us make this logo, which at the time I was like, oh, what are we gonna do with this logo? Well, a lot, it turns out. Next slide. So throughout this process of forming, interestingly, something called Clinicians for Climate Action, which our name de novo arrived. We weren't connected to these other people with the same name. Yeah, interesting. We really tried to focus a lot on human connection, which, as I said, has come up a lot. So for example, one example is this talk here. So the gentleman you see in this picture, Mike Boninger, is a strategic genius. So when we started this organization, I was lucky enough to have the mentorship of this gentleman who's a PNR physician, who has taught me a lot about leadership, and essentially any points I'm going to make are directly pirated from him. But one of the talks we gave, we were so sick of these Zoom meetings where you just see faces all facing forward, nobody's interacting. It's so non-physiologic, right, with how we've evolved. So we tried one where we're in the same room interacting. We purposely put points in our talk where we're non-scripted and we were just interacting because we all crave that so much. So that's just sort of an example of the way we've sort of put this together. Next slide. So lots of different strands, lots of different people coming together. These are the faculty now who are all involved in healthcare sustainability. For background, UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, 60 hospitals, 90,000 employees. It's very large. Basically, the entire city of Pittsburgh. Next slide is healthcare. And so our group, in its 2 years, has collected a lot of members doing lots of really cool and interesting things. Lots of presentations, and our group now has had 2 babies. So let me just fast forward, make sure. So yes, so we've had 2 babies. So next slide. We came together and made this organization. We started a UPMC Center for Sustainability and a University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine Center, which I'll show you some slides later, but some basic sort of principles that helped us in the 2 years grow. So one thing that I've learned is what I would call overselling success. Others might call, during our opening land acknowledgement, I reflected on how similar it is to what those women might call a ceremony or a celebration, a pause to sort of look at what you've done. We did this a lot in the beginning, and hot tip, invite photographers. You all know that already, but we have found that getting a little bit of good press really, really helped us get yeses from our institution. Next slide. It was a lot harder for leadership to say no. We tried to do a lot of things in person. Anybody who knows me knows any event that I'm related to, we're going to have some food and we're definitely going to have music. And I think that helps. This is a land acknowledgement that we had on the river in Pittsburgh, which was really beautiful. Next slide. We're going to advance through a couple of these. Okay, so when we started, this is something that people are sort of interested in. Our institution with 90,000 employees had one employee who was dedicated to sustainability when we started, and now we have a center with multiple employees and really key, having an engineer, having a program director. Physicians can't do it all because we are very busy with patient care, and I'm very, the logarithmic growth that happens once you get employees that aren't physicians is profound. So this is how one of our strands started. So we got together, that picture of all those people you saw, and wrote a pretty shabby document and then passed it through the hands of brilliant minds. And when it arrived back, it was this beautiful letter to our CEO asking for these 6 things. So we wanted our institution to demonstrate intent, sign the climate pledge, which they did, various other specific things. We wanted them to develop a climate plan by 2023, which they've done. We wanted to move to renewable energy. We're about to sign in on a solar farm. We've got some geothermal going for some of our hospitals. We wanted them to divest. We've evolved in that area. We still have some evolution to do there. And we wanted a center with employees, which we now have. And we wanted to integrate environmental quality metrics into educational research and operational goals. And we're moving at light speed in that direction. Once we made this letter, I think the key thing was that our tone was very collaborative. We believed in our institution. We believed that our CEO could do this. I knew from knowing her that she had gone to my talks. She was definitely on board with the ideas. So we knew that at least in concept, they would be on board. We had physicians sign it. So it was just signed by around 300 physicians. We didn't have to work too hard for that, right, Gabe? People were, and then we sent it to the CEO 12 hours later while I was camping. She responded saying, let's do it. And at the same time that she got this letter, Mike Bonninger, that person from earlier, came to her saying, I was kayaking with whales. I want to protect the planet. I've spent my entire life building all of these institutions. Put me on this. And so it was this perfect collaboration of intent and experience, and then many other strands that came together that allowed us serendipitously, to make this happen. Next slide. I'm going to go through a couple. So one of the really cool things that I would say I've learned from all of this is how important it is to center the people in your organization, polishing, elevating those folks and what they do is just a joy and a pleasure. And then you get all this vicarious, I'm not good at so many things. So, there's so many things of skills and talents in this group that by association, I just get to be near, proximal to. And that's what makes your Navajo quilt and rug so beautiful. That's what makes that symphony so gorgeous, right? Just the percussionist wouldn't sound like much, but we vibrate to each other. So next slide. Next slide. These are kind of boring slides, boring to me. This is our strategic plan. If anybody's interested, there are many different facets. There's all sorts of things going on. We managed to ban desflurane across 60 hospitals, in addition to many. And truthfully, that was just about understanding the anesthetic gases, educating the right anesthesiologists in the right way, and then allowing the head of anesthesia to say, you know what, no more education needed. It's gone. So that was sort of a bottom up, but then top down kind of a change, and then many others. Next slide. This is the sort of celebrating success. This also was new to me, working with your PR. That was new for me, knowing my background now. That was something, and working with my institution, working hand in hand with them. I've learned a lot about that. Next slide. And that's my last slide. So so it's been beautiful to some of the really specific things, and this is for maybe more of the learners. I think a lot of you already know these things, but some things some salient take homes. Everything important that you have to say to the members of your organization should be done in person. This is probably obvious to those of you who are professionals, but I had to learn that. That anytime I had feelings about anything, it's not a text or an email, that's a phone call or an in-person. That's been actually a really profound learning point for me. Having regular scheduled meetings where you absolutely touch base with the key folks and making those joyful and really enjoying each other's presence. Giving immediate feedback as a form of respect is something I have learned to do much better, and learned that that's actually how you get better as an organization. And then finally, what I referred to before, which is just elevating the individuals. You notice that conductor wasn't playing an instrument, right? Whether you have a single conductor or a leadership team, their job is to elevate up the orchestra. It's not about them, and to be present. And that to me has been the greatest joy of what I've done. And that's it. Thank you so much.
I'm incredibly moved by that. Really. And the idea of everybody bringing a thread to weave together is truly beautiful. Next up is Lauren Koch. Am I pronouncing that? She's a sustainability program manager at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, and she's with us virtually, and we get to hear another success story from Lauren.
Thank you so much. Are you all able to hear me okay? Yeah. Wonderful. I learned so much from our first two speakers, and I'm honored to be here today. Apologies for not being able to make it in person, but I'm going to try and run through these really quickly so we have some time for questions. If you'll go to the next slide, if you're not familiar with who we are, we're located in Central Ohio. We have 7 hospitals, and we're really, like many other health systems, focused on this outpatient ambulatory strategy, which is going to come into play for today's talk. So if you'll go to the next slide, these are the strategies that are driving our leadership. And so I think this is important to ground us here. You know, Noe talked about kind of how to move an institution. Anna talked about that collaboration with some of the institutional leaders. I think speaking the language as you're trying to move the institution is so critically important. And one pillar that got added in the last year is health equity. And so we've been working really closely with our new Center for Health Equity to align sustainability as well with that. And so if you'll go to the next slide, the goals were actually set by the university, and that's what was able to birth our sustainability program at the medical center. So we're working towards carbon neutrality. We're also drafting new 2030 goals, but we're working on energy, waste, water reduction. And then what I do is I take all of these goals and each annual year's goals to say, and how do those relate back to those strategy pillars? We're also in the process of our new strategic planning goals for beyond 2024, since those expire at the medical center. So I'm hopeful that we'll walk away with a similar process that Noe was able to accomplish, that we're really going to elevate it to this strategic plan and into having a bigger investment in sustainability. But for now, and for where we are today, if you go to the next slide, this helped. First, just a couple quick results. We like to show how this is kind of woven throughout the health system. But for the essence of time, let's go to the next slide where we start diving into today's talk, which is about the Inflation Reduction Act and how we're trying to leverage that. So if you think back to some of our sustainability goals, in 2021, we were embarking on this huge construction push. And because of that, it was a good time to pause and reflect to say, our building, it's one thing to figure out, here's our plan of what we're going to do with existing facilities, but the best time to invest in new facilities is as you're designing them, as you're building them. And so the question was, is LEED getting us where we want to go? Is that certification working for us? And for us as an institution, that answer was no. Let's take the principles of LEED and let's really embrace that into a custom sustainability standard that very clearly aligns with our institutional sustainability goals, but is much more performance driven. So we have a sustainability section now that talks about having an energy target, an energy use intensity target, a water use intensity target, doing life cycle analysis as you pick and choose what's going to go into that building. And this allowed us, as you go to the next slide, to really embark on a new process when we started design for our latest in our ambulatory surgery expansion. And this was outpatient care PAL. Now, this building is a little bit different than our other 3 that we have opened within the last 3 years. It's primarily medical office and ambulatory health services, but it does have the ability to expand into surgery. And it's still a sizable building, 200,000 square feet. So lots of exciting opportunities. And if you go to the next slide, this, I think, started and was rooted back in those standards. It requires a sustainability charrette at each design phase to first set your sustainability goals. So we chose energy, materials, and ecosystem services as our 3 goals of how we wanted to improve upon the design of this building. So we came up with lots of exciting ideas. And then, of course, if you go to the next slide, the biggest question is, but how do you pay for some of the things that we wanted to do? So we're luckily a member of the Healthcare Climate Council, which is a coalition led by Healthcare Without Harm of 20 leading health systems that are committed to climate action. And they offered an opportunity to do an analysis with America's All-In, Rocky Mountain Institute, World Resources Institute, and others. And so they actually worked with us, looked at the design that we had planned for this building that's set to open in 2026 and said, okay, if you were to move forward with these design features, here's what you could expect to receive back from the Inflation Reduction Act. And so if you'll go to the next slide, the first outcome that I would call a baby success is that, we had a lot of things we wanted to do, geothermal being one of them. But this ties into the lesson learned. As you move, for those that have participated in a design process before, as you move forward in that design phase, even at a 40% discount, adding something that's millions of dollars is really difficult to do once that budget is set. So for us, we were not able to move forward with that piece of the design, but we did add something called a heat recovery chiller, which really decreased by 30% our natural gas consumption and improved our energy use intensity target for the design of this building. And it's always a win when you can have anything that is an add to the budget. This was about $200,000. So if you'll go to the next slide, the other win similarly was that we designed it to be solar ready. So that means that the roof has conduit built in, that it's connected, that it can support a future PV system on the roof. Additionally, that the roof is spec'd to be able to withstand the weight of a future PV installation. So again, that's another cost increase that we're able to get it approved. And now we're starting to work to time out our RFP for actually going out to the market and doing a solar that will be separate from this project. But because we've already made this investment, we're excited to move forward with those conversations. And then the next slide, please. Finally, one of the other updates that was made in the Inflation Reduction Act is the commercial energy efficiency tax credit. So this has always existed, but one of the updates they made was that nonprofit healthcare entities can actually ask their designers or their construction companies to accept that benefit on their behalf and then pass through some of those savings. So we're exploring this with our with this project, as well as a few others that are already underway. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're looking at a project that just went into service, because I think, as you heard in Anna's presentation, part of the trick with the Inflation Reduction Act is you actually can't take advantage of those benefits until your project goes into service. So we're trialing out the 179 pass-through with a project that was put into service in August of 2023. We actually have another building opening in 2026, so we're looking at that, as well as looking at our community hospital. And if we were able to bundle multiple projects, could we also take advantage of that 179D there? And I think then my last slide, if you'll just go to the next one, is on lessons learned. Oops, sorry, lessons learned slide. This is where I'll end. Is just if you're involved in the design process, start as early as you can and include a buffer in that project budget before design even starts. That was my personal lesson learned. And then you always need a champion, preferably at the senior leader level, because this is still not always a cost savings, particularly in states like ours that don't have additional state incentives. And then we're looking towards not just building new projects, but our existing buildings and how to leverage these savings. So I'll stop there. So hopefully we have a couple minutes for questions, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Lauren, that was really great. It was great to hear it, in a really granular level, and your insights, especially the lessons learned at the end. So I think we have about 4 minutes. Is that right? Okay, great. And I think we have somebody right here ready to go.
Yes, thank you. This is a question for Lauren. Hi, Lauren. Was wondering why did you decide to design your new medical office building with an EUI of 95? Was there a particular reason how you came to that?
Actually, we were able throughout this process to get it down with a target of 89. But that part of this building is that it's a prototype. That's part of the ambulatory strategy, so that you're saving on design costs from building to building. So there are certain things that are built in, but we were able to improve on that prototype and get it down to an EUI of 89. Unfortunately, with the budget we had, that was about as good as we could get it down to. But we're hopeful that with continuous operations and instituting building schedules, that we can keep it under that 100 mark.
Do you plan on getting that Energy Star certified?
I love that you're promoting that, and absolutely, that is certainly one of our goals in the long term.
Full disclosure, I work at the EPA Energy Star program. Thank you, Lauren.
Which is such a great program, and we could not be more grateful for the benchmarking ability and the way that Energy Star portfolio manager has helped us drive energy results throughout our portfolio.
Great. I'm glad you were here to answer those questions, Lauren. Next question.
Hi, thanks for those wonderful presentations, very inspiring. So our organization is also looking at, we have a strategy for, net zero. We're in the race to zero, the global race to zero. We're trying to put, solar on our parking lots, et cetera. So a couple of questions for actually both of the remote speakers. The community solar project, how did you justify a project, your organization, that was providing energy credits to the community? What was because the C-suite is looking for financial benefit to the organization, right? So my question is, number one, that, and my question for the other speaker, I'm sorry, I forgot your names already, is how can you give a few more specifics on how you justify a project that is not going to result in a cost savings to the organization? Because our organization is constantly complaining that they're not making enough money. You know, we hear this a lot in medicine, that we're really close to that line. We're almost in the red. We're not making enough money. You know, there are different regulatory environments in every state. You know, we have renewable energy standard that's basically trying to kill community solar in our state. So it's being reserved for, and this is Vermont, by the way. So it's being reserved for low-income people. So I'm really interested in the answer to that question, because maybe community solar for low-income people is a way that we could pull off a project like that at our hospital. So anyway, thank you.
So to repeat the question, so we're sure that the people at home can hear it, it's being posed to both of our virtual speakers, and one is directed first towards Anna to make sure, how did you frame the issue of community solar specifically in terms of the financial aspect of it? And then similarly, for you, Lauren, how did you sell it to the C-suite if there isn't a saving? So do you want to go first, Anna?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, BMC has been investing in sustainability and energy efficiency for a long time, and we actually have a very large power purchase agreement with a solar farm in North Carolina that covers most of our energy needs, and that's a sort of there's more solar potential in North Carolina. It's kind of more efficient and lower cost per square foot of the PV down there. And so a lot of our energy needs are already covered. And this was a project, they were just going to kind of apply the energy to our own account. And it was just going to like add a little bit, but not a lot. And I think that it does take some vision on the part of the leadership, but I think sort of a novel use of the Inflation Reduction Act was exciting to people. The fact that it covers 60% of the cost of installation was huge, because they would reap some of the some savings there for the costs that they had already put into installing. So that was very appealing. And then it's also been a fundraising opportunity to go to donors and say, look what we're doing here. It's a project that's at the intersection of climate and energy justice and economic equity, and it's very appealing to the community. It also just bridges with our community in a way that's been powerful. So you do need to have some visionary leadership in order to get something like this through. The other thing I'll just say is to get that low-income Communities Bonus Act adder that we're getting to get the additional 20% of subsidies, you only need to donate 50%. So you could keep 50%, put that on your hospital's energy bill, and then donate half of the energy. So it doesn't have to be everything.
And I'll just add that we are still very much in the place of cost savings. I mean, that's just the state of healthcare right now. And I would say 90% of what I'm trying to get done is still, there's an ROI to it. That said, two things helped in this scenario. One is that the Inflation Reduction Act 179D cost savings pass through. We do think it's possible we're going to get some of that money back. So some of the adders that are going to increase the budget for this project, we think we might have some money coming back to us. So that certainly helped. But then second, I think it does come back to what Anna said, which is really prepping your leaders, helping them see the greater vision. Because when the person that I meet with on a regular basis, he was one of the final decision makers. And what he actually said when we decided to add that $200,000 additional heat recovery chiller was, it's the right thing to do. And so even though it's a small win, we're on the right track. I think we just need to keep going with that to help them understand our mission is rooted in healing, as Lisa said, and health has to be shown in all of our operations.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
One more or no? Oh, we're done. Anyhow, you guys, this has just been such an honor to hear from all of these great leaders and to be here with each of you today. Thanks.